This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning, good day, hello, and welcome back to another episode, and a special episode for us here on 5 Task Force. As we said in the beginning, for those of you listening to the audio, that this is our wrap-up for 2022, and it's been a hell of a year for lots of us, from backing down finally off all the limits and what we're required to help suppress COVID in our communities and amongst the people who take care of us, including some of the folks we're going to talk about today. But for all of us, it was a little bit of a point of renewal. But then again, we got hit with two different variants of the COVID, and it goes to show that, nothing is ever set in stone when it comes to medicine. But we've done well, and we're doing better, thank goodness, and that's what's important. And my guest today, I couldn't think of anyone better suited to discuss with us the 2022 year, especially as it deals with first responders and especially the fire service. And that is a good friend of the podcast, my good friend for over 30 years, Todd LeDuc. He is currently the Chief Strategy Officer for Lifescan Wellness Centers. And he was the former Executive Assistant Chief for Broward County Fire-Rescue, starting back in Massachusetts. We were both from, he started as an EMT there and got his paramedic there. And that was an early time for Massachusetts and its paramedic allowing others that would be outside Boston City Health and hospitals. Because I remember when my dad took sick in 84, may he rest in peace, and the ambulance came in Framingham, and I said, okay, we're going to need the paddles, we're going to need the drug box, and he said, Steve, we don't have that. I said, what do you mean you don't have it? Of course you have it, just let's get it out. He goes, no, we're only EMTs. Massachusetts has never passed the statewide paramedic law. It's only at Boston City Health and Hospitals. And I said, that sucks. And I got my dad in viable to the ER, but he passed later that day. But the fact is that today we have great EMTs, we have great paramedics, we have nurse practitioners, we have physician assistants, we have a great cadre of wonderful medical professionals who are helping us. And there's even a subgroup of that is dedicated to the fire service. And Todd and his work with Lifescan Wellness Centers, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But just before we began recording, we both agreed that we are going to begin this podcast discussing somebody that Todd knew very, very well. I had the pleasure of meeting a couple of times. He was a guest on the show, and that's our late friend, mentor, guidance counselor, teacher, great reader, aficionado of history, and that's the late Bobby Halton. You may know, if you didn't know a long past of his, well, you may know him then as the director of the FDIC conference every year, and also the executive editor of one of the great trades, fire engineering. Todd, welcome to the show. So glad to have you, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Steve. Thank you for inviting me back on. It's always a special treat when I get to spend some time with you and your listeners, and we always have such great conversations. So thank you. Happy holidays to you and your family, and looking forward to a good 2023 as we head into a new year, and I'm hopeful it'll be a good year for all of us.
Right. Very true. Very true. Couldn't say amen stronger to something than that.
For sure. So, God bless.
Right. So, Todd, you did know Chief Bobby Halton very, very well. There was a lot of interaction between you two over the years, your books, reading, the two of you working together on projects through the IAFC and other committees. Tell us a little bit about how you knew Bobby Halton.
Yeah, and thanks, Steve, for the opportunity. Bobby really a legend in the fire service, and I really we're all saddened by his sudden passing. I think we all rejoice in just looking at the friendships that we've had with him and the legacy that he's left behind. And I know he was a very strong family man, and started his career early. Was born up in New York and worked his way out to Albuquerque for school. Ended up being deputy chief of the Albuquerque Fire Department. Really focused on training over the years, and went to a department in Texas as chief of department. And ultimately, his journey took him to giving back. And he was such a strong reader of history and supporter of the mission of serving others. Not only first responders, but strong advocate of our armed forces in the work they do to keep our country safe. I knew Bobby in many different capacities. I had, the honor of teaching for him at FDIC for a number of years, participating in the stair climb and the 5K run that Bobby always participated in and led the way. I think anyone that knew Bobby would say that he was a great mentor and looked to, I had a wise chief that taught me a long time ago that if it's in your power to do good, then do good for people. And that was Bobby. I mean, I can tell one story to your audience. I had for years said I'm going to write a book, and we're all so busy, right? So between being chief at Broward County, which is a job 24/7 in and of itself, but also being on the board of IFC's Safety, Health, and Survival, teaching paramedics, just never found the time to pull it together. So one day I just happened to be having a conversation with Bobby, lamenting that I really, had not brought that to fruition. And the two of us kind of just talked through that. Hey, we both know so many friends and colleagues that really the leading industry experts on firefighter health and wellness and survival. Why don't we just pull them all together and create this vision, which would be, we ended up calling it Surviving the Fire Service. But the vision was from the time someone is considering going into the service or new recruits, through folks that have retired or are no longer active. Let's give them the best science that's out there and the best guidance on how to have a safe, healthy, and in a career that doesn't disable them if we can prevent it. Right. So Bobby stepped right up to the plate and said, I'll be happy to tackle a chapter, which he did. And we pulled together such a great group of friends and colleagues, everyone from our current U.S. Fire Administrator, Dr. Lori Moore Merrill, authored a chapter. We've got Frank Lido talking about behavioral health. Frank, of course, was many years retired from FDNY in their counseling unit, and the list goes on and on. So, but the message I took away from Bobby was, let's create this community of friends to give back to the fire service, and that's what his life was. His, if you look at FDIC, well, yes, Bobby often referred to it as the greatest show on earth, and it is, right. It's a behemoth. It's a monster. 35,000 or however many attendees, and I would get lost just trying to navigate the exhibit hall. But the essence of that conference and the essence of even fire engineering, I've been blessed to publish quite frequently in fire engineering, and the whole conference and the journal and it's all about giving back and passing that knowledge on to others. So I think that's what Bobby's legacy certainly is and will be remembered for, at least from the folks that I've talked to that know him and knew him well. And yes, well, his passing, he had battled cancer, and his passing came to many unexpectedly. I think it's also a reminder that none of us are entitled to another day. So, living each day, treating people how you'd want to be treated, when it's in your power to do good, to do good. And remember that we're all put here on earth, I believe, for a reason and for a finite amount of time. So, Bobby exemplified making the most of that time by how he treated others.
No, for sure. Absolutely. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the 2002 FDIC with another mutual friend of ours, Frank Correggio. And Frank and I we did both live audio and live video from the convention floor. And I had met Bobby that first day, was introduced to him. And he asked me if I was a firefighter. I told him, yes, in the past tense, I had been a firefighter. And very cordial, only a couple of minutes. But he did come by the table when when he was walking the floor one of the days and says, I can't believe you guys, schlepped all this stuff just for FDIC. And we said, if we didn't do it anyplace else, this is where it had to be, at FDIC. He says, well, you guys are doing a great job and thank you very much. And again, it was only a few minutes, but to have him come over in the midst of this very moving and touching FDIC, because it was the first one subsequent to the tragedy of 9/11. It was more of a somber, it didn't have all what we normally expect. Those of us who have been to some of the national trade shows, whether it's been in the fire service or other fields, you kind of know that when you usually go there, it's an upbeat thing. And this one was, one of the things that he did stress that I adored him for, and you and I share that same passion, is continuing education in the fire service. That no firefighter has ever learned everything they need to know to do the job, and they should always keep themselves open to learning, whether it's how to better tie a knot, to going onto a specialty team and qualifying for them, whatever. He just wanted us to continue to be the best we could be by learning what we could. And
for sure, and that's another great example that even the first time you met Bobby, he would always make that individual feel special and important and valued, and it's just a quality that he had. He was a great motivational speaker, could get an entire group of attendees fired up quickly. But he just also had a great sense about him on how to treat people, which of course, is important in any aspect of our lives.
Right. Folks, if you're regular listeners, the last week we re-released our interview with Chief Halton that took place in August of 2017. We were just beginning our second season. I still wasn't quite sure if I knew what I was doing or why I accepted this task that some others had cajoled me into. But I love it dearly over all these years. And it did give me purpose when in darker times, both with my back issues and then when I got sick 2 years ago with now what we know is what's called Hashimoto syndrome. It's an autoimmune disorder that affects the thyroid, especially in men. But the fact that he, on that podcast, when I introduced him and I had a nice long bio, he said, I'm just another American firefighter trying to do the best he can. And I paused because I didn't have a retort for that. He wasn't just a regular American firefighter. He was so much more than that to those of us who came through the service in his early days, but seeing his leadership back then. So
he had that uncanny ability to be very forceful in his opinions, to be very well versed in what he would speak on, but at the same time to be able to thread humility into the discussion. And that's I've found over the years that's a rare trait to be able to.
Oh, without a doubt.
To be able to do. So we're going to miss him, but I know his legacy lives large And, I know I believe he's looking down not only on his family and friends, but on the fire service. So he'd be very proud of us having this discussion today, and probably remind us that he was just a small, tiny piece of
Right.
American fire service history. But I think it goes much beyond that.
Right. Very true. Very true. All right. So we do want to send our respects and condolences to the Halton family, and know that he's in our hearts.
Absolutely. And keep them all in our prayers.
Right. So let's talk about 2022. Just before we came on the air, we talked about the fact that, unfortunately for the fire service, we had a kind of a significant rise in the number of fatalities that we had to deal with in 2022. And we still, unfortunately, have a few more days. And as you said, we just don't know what each day is going to bring. As I joked with you and others that when they ask how I'm doing now that I'm finally on medication for this syndrome, I always refer him to the Forrest Gump movie when he says life is like a box of chocolates because you never know what you're going to get. And I don't know what each day is going to be like until I'm about an hour to 2 hours into it. And then I'll know if it's going to be a decent day or it's going to be a crappy day. But right now there's still more decent days than crappy days. So I'll buy that. I'll buy into that. But it has been a difficult year for us. And we've lost our brothers and sisters in basically all the major ways. We've had loss in an incident. We've had medical episodes that have taken them. We've had struck bys with our D drivers, D for distracted. And it's just not been great. So before we move on to how we can help ourselves better in the next segment, but let's talk about, do you think it was just fate that this week, after several decent years where our numbers were low in the somewhere between the 50s and 60s, that we kind of jumped quite a bit higher this year?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Steve. I think we've made, as you pointed out, tremendous inroads with addressing awareness on preventable line of duty death and disability. The big ones, obviously on the medical side, cardiac, cancer, firefighter suicide, and we don't really have a good tracking mechanism on behavioral health, disability, and suicide. So on the injury side, we still continue to see, unfortunately, even though awareness is much increased, motor vehicle struck collisions particularly on highways. The number, I think, is drastically improved from when we look back in history from the 70s and even into the 80s for losing firefighters on fire ground. And we've done a lot of work on that, the rules of engagement, the IFF's firefighting survival training, equipment, procedures, staffing levels. But, I think in probably the final chapter on this year is yet to be written in terms of looking at the larger picture. But some of the things I think that are worth considering. COVID took a tremendous toll not only on the nation and the world, but on first responders. We lost, I don't have the numbers in front of me, a significant number was just sent out by the IFC's Metro Chief Section, significant number of first responders that died from COVID over the last 3 years. And I think responding during the pandemic and everything that came with that took a toll on first responders as well, whether it increased our complacency. I think a lot of first responders had burnout. I think staffing, whether we want to admit it or not, is a new issue that it's even more exacerbated today. I'm blessed to be able to travel around the country. I talk to lots of colleagues around the country, including my own department in Broward, which is a large metro department. And there is a significant recruitment and retention issue. So many departments are running short staff. And I'm talking on the career side. If we look at the volunteer side, it's even more magnified,
Right.
with the challenges of trying to balance some of the economic pressures that the country is facing with inflation and rising prices. So in your full-time career, but then balance also volunteering in your hometown community. So I think part of the issue is there's some effects of the pandemic that are still out there on responders. I think there are challenges with staffing. If you talk to even on the apparatus and equipment side, there's supply chain issues. I'm hearing from departments that there's several years wait to replace aged apparatus and aged equipment because they can't get the materials. I think I will say the safety culture is stronger than I've ever seen it in my 30 some odd years in the fire service. We're implementing, we're training more, we're looking at root causes. We have a U.S. fire administrator that is focused on providing, getting our hands on the correct data, so we're able to actually answer questions like you're asking me right now, and using data to help us make those decisions, and make systematic change to make it safer for our first responders that are out there. So I'm hopeful this isn't an ongoing trend. I am very concerned about the recruitment and retention issues across, we say across the fire service, but it's really across most segments of our society. I know certainly the healthcare system and healthcare sector has faced tremendous pressures with recruitment and retention of healthcare workers, and that transcends, again, probably a number of different factors. Largely, people are burnt out from the pandemic. People are prioritizing work-life balance and looking at, maybe I can spend more time with family if I, don't burn the candle over here on this other end. And it's a challenge. I know we've got lots of smart folks from different stakeholder organizations looking at this. I know U.S. Fire Administration is dedicating funding to help address some of these issues. But we have to be mindful of the impacts of these, and then how we respond with some of these challenges when the alarm goes off. Because obviously we don't have a choice when we're called to serve our community. We go. But if we're short-staffed or we're running short-staffed, it has to impact some of our decision making and some of our risk-benefit analysis in terms of what we commit our crews to, and we just have to be mindful that maybe the equation is a little bit different today than it was 3 years ago.
I agree, and especially to what you just closed with there, because we have good friends Nick Peppard and Sean Duffy, who created the Make Do podcast, which was actually born on this show. They came to me, and one of the title come Make Do means, 80% of us really deal with suburban communities with mixed use, basically, unless you're really very rural. But even there, you're going to have mixed use because you have fertilizer supply and stuff like that in the rural areas. But that we cannot always depend upon when the tones ring, that we'll have 7-8 pieces of apparatus show up with their full crew complements on there. Whereas in our departments, we're going to be lucky to get out that first apparatus, maybe a second piece right away, and then we have to wait for fill-in or whatever else is going to be. And once we're on scene, we have to make do with what we have. Because as you said, we just can't say, sorry, we can't answer today because we can't answer the call today. We see what's happening, the trades and the news blasts we get every day in email. We see these incidents where departments all over the country, both career, part pay, volunteer, are working to make do with what they have. And they've had some major emergencies and they found some workarounds to do so. But it's because they were pushed against the wall because of this issue. And I remember I think it was probably like 3 years ago, we had a regular podcast, a small panel on including Chief Anthony Correa. And when I told him about the topic, he said, Steve, you got to change things around. I said, why? Is there a problem with the podcast? He goes, no. I mean, the title of this one, he goes, you can't do recruitment and retention. You need to do retention and recruitment, because if you can't keep the people you have, how are you going to bring in new people, and why would they stay? And I had never thought of it that way during listening as the whole crisis began of volunteer and started to creep into the career side. I never looked at it that way. And he made his point, and he's absolutely right. If we can't keep the people that we have, and most departments have really good people there, but if we can't keep them, they're going to go someplace else where they'll be more appreciated, I guess is the word. And it's not that these other communities don't appreciate them. Sometimes those budget strings are just tied into knots that can't be undone. And again, we have to make do with what we have. But that should make us strive to be the best that we can be. Whether we have 4 in an engine, 3 in an engine, 6 on an engine company, whatever, we should still strive to be the best we can be.
Yeah, for sure. In the retention issue, we're going to have to work through that as a service. And it's not just the fire service. And when I say first responders, law enforcement is even facing greater challenges in terms of keeping officers and our emergency telecommunicators, dispatchers. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And, I think, there's been tremendous amount of work done by Lori Moore, NIST, and others on the importance of staffing in our profession. But at the end of the day, if you can't control how many people you're able to send to a scene, and many volunteer communities can't, and now we're seeing it even on career, then that needs to be part of the calculus in terms of our risk management and decision making. Your listeners have probably all heard, particularly if they've been to the National Fire Academy, the adage of risk a lot to save a lot, risk little to save little. And that, sometimes we need to remind ourselves, particularly if you're not dealing with the perfect hand of cards. So if the incident commander knows that they're going to be short-staffed to a particular incident, that needs to be calculated in terms of the decision-making on that incident. And unfortunately, I think this is going to be an issue we're going to be dealing with, for the foreseeable future. I know my friends on the West Coast, when I'm out in the West Coast circles, particularly California, they're all competing for a very same applicant pool, and they're using lateral transfers. So you can leave one department, bring your seniority with you, and go to another department, maybe get a signing bonus. But it's challenging because it's twofold, and I agree with Chief Carrera very much that if you don't address retention, you'll never make up recruitment on the other side. So we're going to have to figure that out. I think, again, part of it is COVID, that during, I think, the fatigue from COVID burnt out a lot of first responders. We have a lot of folks that have re-examined their work-life priorities and what their career priorities are. and obviously this is, if I look and see that this is having a huge impact on career departments, then we certainly magnify that with the challenges that our volunteer firefighters are facing in our volunteer communities. So, until we can get our arms completely wrapped around this, we're going to have to continue to be smart with how we operate on scenes, make sure our risk decision-making calculus always puts the safety of our firefighters foremost, which we always do. But as we see some of these challenges continue, we need to make sure that those are factored into our decision making.
Right. Very good points, all. And I agree that this is going to be a problem that we're going to be facing as we move ahead. And one of the things we have to look at is we have to become introspective. We can't always put it on the outside effects. There's lots of things within the service, within each department, within each firehouse, that can change the balance of recruitment or retention. And we have to look internally, introspectively as well, to say, are we doing the best for the people we have? Because they could be our greatest asset in bringing new people in. And if they're happy here, they're going to help say, hey, you know what? Why don't you join up with our department? We got great pay, good benefits, very few overshifts, stuff like that, unless you want to choose one yourself to help a buddy out or something like that. And if we can do that, if we can look at our organization, not just ourselves, but look at ourselves as part of this organization and what we can do to help it and make it better, then we put our heads together, and each department can do that along with the help they receive locally, in the regional and, of course, in the national help from the U.S. Fire Administration.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stephen. And, I think just to add to that as well is, sometimes listening and learning from the members themselves. Sometimes as chiefs and administrators, we focus on some of the things that we believe that will attract and retain the members, such as, and you mentioned some of them, a decent salary, pension, healthcare benefits. But when you talk to departments that have all those, and they're still struggling with retaining employees, sometimes it's those intangible things as well. More
Right.
time off, work-life balance, a working environment, having input into decision making. So sometimes it just, I think your point's well taken. Being introspective and putting together maybe a group of members or within the department to say, what are the priorities of our rank and file, and are what we providing aligned with those priorities to make sure that we have, if you have happy and satisfied firefighters, they're going to treat the customer like gold, and like any profession, we got to take care of ourselves to make sure we're getting our people what they need to allow them to focus on servicing the customers, the communities. So great point. I couldn't agree more with you.
Good. All right. Well, thank you. And folks, if you want to get a better handle on the concept of work-life balance, please tune in to my friend here, Todd LeDuc, when he works with Dr. Donnie, and they have a podcast called Work-Life Balance, and that's what it's about. And they talk with people from not just from first responders, but in other vocations to help find and help guide people to help them with that concept of work-life balance. So I believe they come out every Thursday, something like that.
That's right. That's right, Steve. So it's called the Get Balanced podcast. It's with myself and my co-host, Dr. Donnie Hutchinson. So he has one that is released on Monday, and then he and I do a joint one on Thursday. So I know you'll agree with me, first responders, and I'm a classic example of needing help on work-life balance. But we try to have the topics so that they're very focused on not only the health and wellness, but making sure your personal life, your family relationships, spiritual, self-care, all the things to make you well-rounded, to make sure we get you through your many, many years of service and into retirement happy, healthy, and just holistically. So
Right.
thanks. We'd love to have any listeners join us, and thanks for giving that plug.
Oh, my pleasure. Dr. Donnie was a wonderful guest when he was on, and he liked it so much he was able to launch his own podcast, which I'm thrilled. To me, some say, well, that's not great. They're ripping you off. I said, no, they're not. No, they're not. They actually learned from what we did, and they want to do something similar for what they see as their audience. I said, I'm thrilled to do it. I mean, when Dr. Donnie started his, and Nick and Sean started Make Do, nothing made me happier, because I know that they take it. Everybody who comes and does this brings their own message, and again, that's the way we learn. Is you don't stay with the same teacher from first grade to 12th grade. We learn. We change teachers around. We adjust classes, topics, and so these podcasts that serve first responders, again, all our branches, fire rescue, law enforcement, EMS, our communications team, who really are the absolute first responders. And let's not forget that. They are the first responders. When you call 911, it's not a firefighter that answers that phone. It's a call taker and a dispatcher for your department. And you have to remember, they are our first responders. So I think that's all very true. And that anything we can do to help our first responders feel better about their job and get more out of the job they're doing, so that it fulfills them, that desire inside, that calling that they felt to join initially, that's a positive step for all of us. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break here. If you're watching the video, you know that you're not going to see anything different. If you're listening to the audio, well, we're going to have a couple of promotional spots coming in, and then we'll be right back with my guest and good friend, Chief Todd LeDuc, right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to this episode of 5 Alarm Task Force. My guest is good friend, former executive fire chief here in Broward County, Florida, and now the chief strategy officer for Lifescan Wellness Centers. And that's what we're going to be turning to on this segment. We're going to talk about the important job. And Todd has several cases that he's going to tell you about, so you can understand just how important Lifescan Wellness Centers, their annual medical exams are for first responders. And all right, well, I was going to say something else, but I'm going to wait. And so, Todd, let's talk about, just before we came on, you cited two really great examples right here in Broward County from the recent exams they did down here. Why don't you share that with our audience, please? Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Let me start, if I may, just for those who may not be familiar with Lifescan Wellness Centers. So we're a company. We're based here in Florida. We provide services in many states throughout the country. And we focus exclusively on public safety, firefighter and law enforcement, comprehensive early detection physicals using NFPA guidance, NFPA 1582 and 1583. But we also incorporate some additional lab work, and then some enhanced imaging using ultrasound. We're also recently under contract with the newly formed IFF Health Trust. So any departments that are a member of the IFF's Health Trust, the trust actually pays for Lifescan to come into that department. and do their early detection comprehensive physicals. But yeah, you mentioned that we were talking just in my own department of 850, 900 members down here in Southeast Florida in Broward County. They're actually have been doing their annual physicals since August because that department is so large. They're still ongoing. So we do about 45 physicals a week. And you say, boy, that's not a lot, but each physical is about 3 hours. So you're spending an hour with an exercise physiologist, you're doing stress testing, you're doing NFPA 1583, which of course is our physical fitness assessment. You're spending an hour having ultrasound imaging done. The beauty of that imaging is there's no radiation. It's another tool in the toolbox. We use high resolution imaging to look at the vascular system, to look at organs, to look at the cardiac echo of the left ventricle. And then about an hour with the actual head-to-toe physical exam, NFPA 1582, some behavioral health screenings, going over all your lab work, your image findings, your cardiac findings. But you know what continues to strike me and motivate me at the same time is just in this last round of physicals at Broward County. We had 2 early detection, I'll say saves, because they were significant health findings that, having gone undetected, ultimately could have had a very disastrous outcome. One of them was an aneurysm in a relatively younger female firefighter. Fortunately, it was identified early, is being medically monitored now by the vascular team. And we all know that a significant aneurysm, if it breaks through the vasculature, can have devastating consequences very quickly. In the second case, came in relatively younger, 25-year-old firefighter, only 2 years on the job, and felt fine, did not have, was asymptomatic, would have had a normal physical except for the ultrasound imaging, which identified a renal mass that turned out to be early stage renal cancer. So we were able in that individual even to go back and look at their prior years imaging for their testing, and that mass was not on that imaging. So it was a new onset. It did turn out to be early stage cancer. But you know, whether we're talking about cancer or an aneurysm or even a behavioral health screening where there's an issue, the key to doing this type of very comprehensive annual medical, physical, and screenings is that when we find a stage 1 cancer like this, the survival is close to 100%. When that spread occurs, typically when you have symptoms, you likely already have spread occurring. And then we start trying to figure out what's causing the symptoms. Well, by that time, it's often, unfortunately, spread, in the lymphatic system and beyond to other organs, and the survival just drops precipitously. The same with an aneurysm. Unfortunately, all too often, the first sign of an aneurysm may be sudden collapse and death when the aneurysm ruptures. So the goal is to find these things early. Same with behavioral health. If we've got a firefighter that's struggling and we can identify that on behavioral health screening, we can intervene early. We can get them help. We can get them on a pathway to being stabilized. So, I mentioned to you just in conversation before we started taping those 2 cases in Broward, but I've been blessed really, and it's because we've got great clinical teams throughout the country that Lifescan employs. And we're in all sizes of departments, from small departments of 45 To large. This year we've been under contract with local 42 Kansas City, Missouri Fire Department, which is 1,400 members. Sacramento, Oakland, large metro-sized departments, Newport News, Virginia. These type of early detection, I call them saves because they really save someone's life. There's not a day that goes by or a week that goes by that I don't get an email, a phone call, a thank you for basically, finding a hidden danger lurking below the surface that could actually be a line of duty death, waiting to happen. So very rewarding personally. And I know that's what motivates our clinical teams to go out there and they know first responders' jobs are dangerous enough. We don't need to be losing each other from preventable management of diseases that we can, if we can't prevent them, we can certainly find them early and manage them successfully. So thanks for allowing me. I know our local in Broward, local 4321 is a huge supporter. They've seen this was 2 the year before. They had 4 cancer finds, 2 bladder cancers on imaging and 2 prostate cancers on PSA testing. So it's saving lives on a daily basis, not just in Florida, but in all the states that we're operating in.
Right. And I think that's so important. And we have been here at Five Alarm Task Force Corp. We have been blessed by the fact that 2 large companies, number one, Lifescan Wellness Centers, and our good friend Tonya over at Responder Wipes provide 2 grand prizes for every one of our webinars for the last little over a year now. They've been helping us out. And we just do a simple drawing at the end of the webinar. And one of the great things about Todd, and he's taken this under his belt with Lifescan, is that if the winner of one of the drawings is not with a department that already uses Lifescan, Todd works with that person to find the nearest department to them that does Lifescan and make sure they get put into that roster for that community when the time comes. And to me, to know that they're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts to help our product along, because most of our fundraising comes from our webinars, and we will be having another webinar we're looking at February now. We have a great topic, some great speakers already, and we're hoping, we haven't spoken yet, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Todd, but we're hoping that both companies will be behind us to offer those gifts for people who come not just to win the gifts and not just to hear the speakers, but to learn, because every one of our webinars is geared to teach those in attending via Zoom, to teach them something about the service that we love to do. But as Todd just mentioned, if we don't take care of ourselves first, how can we take care of those we've taken the oath to protect? And so whether it's Lifescan coming to your community, and we're going to give you, just before we sign off, we're going to give you Todd's contact information so that if you're interested for your department, if your department is interested in your spokesperson for that department, you can reach out to Todd, find out how their system works. He'll get you all the information that you and your department need to look into partnering up with Lifescan Wellness Centers. And again, as he said, it's not just in Florida, though their brick and mortar buildings are here in Florida. They travel throughout the United States to help public safety departments just for this one purpose, and that is to let you do your job knowing that you're doing well physically, mentally, basically emotionally, and that you go out there and you serve your community to the best of your abilities. And, as Todd said, and we've seen it too many times, is that suddenly we just lose somebody. And just as we opened up, Chief Bobby Halton We just lost him a week ago tonight. It'll be 1 week ago tonight that Bobby passed suddenly and unexpectedly. We don't know. Maybe, would a life scan maybe have seen something? Maybe, but there's no guarantee. On the other hand, if you do have something that you don't know about, there is the opportunity, as Todd just explained, that Lifescan might detect it. And if and when they do, they can help lead you on the path to contact the people, the medical people in your community to get you better. And that's their goal.
Yeah, Steve, I'll give your audience can reach out and contact myself or us through our website. There's a contact form on there. So it's lifescanwellnesscenters.com. Again, www.lifescanwellnesscenters.com. The other resource that I would encourage your listeners to download, whether our clinicians at Lifescan are very knowledgeable about firefighter occupational health and NFPA, but if you're primary care physician or your cardiologist or whoever is following you may not be. So through the work of the First Responder Center of Excellence and partner entities, the National Volunteer Fire Council, the IFC, the IFF, there's an updated, it's called the Healthcare Providers Guide for Firefighter Physicals, and it's two-sided. It's intended that you can give your health provider this document, and real quickly they can get up to speed on the unique risk of cardiac issues in firefighter, cancer in firefighter, behavioral health struggle in firefighter, and what testing is recommended above and beyond likely what they would order for just any other occupation. So it's a great resource. You can just Google it, Yahoo, search, whatever search engine you use. And it was just recently updated. So I call it version 2.0. It's got some additional recommendations and statistics in there and what we should be considering as healthcare providers for ordering on testing. Because if you think about it, most healthcare providers probably don't see that many firefighters. I know my internist probably has 2 maybe firefighters in his practice. So being able to hand him or her a short and sweet document that gets them up to speed on what those unique risks to our health are from our job. So great resource. Take time to go download it and share it with your colleagues and also your health providers.
Right. John, does Lifescan work with any volunteer or part volunteer departments?
We do. So we're, as I mentioned, all over the spectrum. Not only volunteer, but combination, career departments, metro-sized departments, and then we also see law enforcement as well. So we have, in fact, this 2023 will be Lifescan's 25th year in operation, and they actually started with a bricks and mortar clinic in Jacksonville, Florida, serving the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, which they continue to do today.
A little brisk up here today, though.
It is a little brisk, absolutely.
My buddy in Gainesville over the weekend said it was 22 degrees. So
yeah,
I don't miss that.
I don't at all.
Yeah, you and I both from Boston. We know what cold is like, and I lived in Syracuse for 4 years, so I really know what cold's like. But I don't need 22 degrees down in Florida. It was 41 degrees here the other day was cold enough.
Yeah, for sure. It did remind me as I talked to relatives last night in New Hampshire that it was 8 degrees in the morning, and they had lost power, and so. Yeah, I feel for those areas of the country that have been hit very hard with this bomb storm that they're calling. Yeah, so we're blessed to be in South Florida with the weather we have.
Right. So, folks, again, if you're with a volunteer department, that doesn't rule you out. I would suggest that you take to your board and your chief, tell them that you've heard about Lifescan Wellness Centers, and hopefully they're not just going to say just dismiss it out of turn. You need somebody or a small committee to do the research. You can get in touch when you make that contact using that contact form. Todd or somebody else will be in touch with you to let you know and get you the information you need to make an informed decision. We talk about that in the fire service so much, but we usually talk about tactics. And is that IC making the informed decision? Does he have his or her buggy set up so they get all the information, they have all the news, so they know exactly who's where, when, how. But oftentimes in the administration of our departments, we kind of let that slide. We can't, especially when it comes to the life and health of our members. Again, career, volunteer, combination makes no difference. We care about each and every one of them. So at least see if they can reach out to Lifescan, see if it's something that could be feasible for your department. And you can also, especially with volunteer departments, don't forget you have a resource with the National Volunteer Fire Council. When we got really rolling a couple of years ago with the forms that a firefighter could take with them, as Todd just mentioned, to your personal physician, they came in with one for volunteers as well. And so we always pushed it. You can go to the IAFF site or you can go to the NVFC and ask for those forms so that you can take it to your personal physician and let them know that you are a firefighter or have been a firefighter and some of the challenges that you met. And you probably know if you've been there for a few years or more already, you already know some of the things that we like to avoid, like things like PFAS in our gear and making sure we're wearing our SCBA on all types of fires now. It's not, you just can't say it's a dumpster fire, who cares? No, because you don't know what's in that dumpster burning, as we found out. Over probably 5 years ago, we found out of a firefighter in Providence. I believe he was the captain, but they went through a dumpster fire. They didn't mask up, went back to the station and weren't feeling well. And it turns out the captain was afflicted with hydrogen cyanide gas. And they were able to catch it and take care of him before his cardiac episode started, because that's one of the cardiac sulfide poisoning is often misdiagnosed as a cardiac incident. So this is a way, Lifescan is a way, not a guarantee, because folks, as we all know, there are no guarantees in life, but it is a way to give you, your department, your people, a better chance of serving you while they're healthy and well, as opposed to the opposite. So we hope you're going to look into it. Again, you go to www.lifescan, that's one word, lifescanwellnesscenters.com, and hit the contact button there. The form will come up, fill it out, and you'll hear back from somebody shortly. And to tell you the truth, when there were a lot more cases from just Broward County that Todd didn't bring up today, but over the years that Todd's been our guest here, in the last 3 years since he's been working for, with Lifescan, he had probably one of the shortest retirements in fire service history. I went to his retirement ceremony. It was lovely. He played golf the next day, and he started working for Lifescan the day after that. So he had a beautiful one-day golf day of retirement that he really enjoyed, celebrated.
I'm not sure I thought that out fully.
I know, but listen, you know what?
It's all good, though.
Exactly. Knowing you as I have for all these years since we met at Mike's wedding, and when he said, "Hey, this guy's from Boston too. You'll like each other," and we'll shout out to Mike Jackals. I'm not sure if he listens in, but Mike also was a good friend, and he was a great photojournalist, an amazing photojournalist, and then he's been a terrific PIO since then on with various agencies. And when you listen to him, you know this guy knows what he's talking about. And he reminded me so much of you, honest to goodness, because the same way that you always know what you're talking about, you have a mastery of the topic, and you deliver it. You always have, and I think that's what is most important today in our communication, is that we don't necessarily take the time to be good communicators. we take the time to be fast communicators. That doesn't always work. Good communication is what we need. And that's from your job to your family. Without communication, there's a separation that occurs. And so
That's a great point. Very good point, Steve.
And so it's when we communicate well, we accomplish so much more. And sometimes it is hard to bite your lip and hold the real words that you want to use back. But I think you will find in the long run, as somebody even older than Todd is, I got a few years on him, but the fact that we have learned that good communication is priceless in so many ways. If it's just to say, I love you to your partner, or you give the kids a hug when you come home, even though you came home late, you give them a hug, you tell them that you love them, you give them kisses, you scruffle their hair a little bit. Boy, I can tell you that goes so far without a word, just to bring that to your kids. So communication, education, taking care of yourself physically, taking care of your emotional health as well, will make you a stronger, better family person, great member of society, and someone that your community will know they can depend on as a firefighter or a police officer or a paramedic, EMT, recovery driver, on the road rangers, because they all do it, not because they just were looking for a job, because they want to help people. And we all find that tier that we're most comfortable on to help them. Todd, I can't think of it, like I said before, I can't think of a better way to have started off, started the wind down for 2022. And as we look ahead to just a couple of days to 2023, thank you so much for all you share with us. Thank you for all the support from Lifescan Wellness. And we look forward to having you back in the spring and learning more of what Lifescan is doing, and especially what the safety committee is talking about, because we definitely, they've been working towards it on our D drivers. We use the word D for distracted because there are so many distractions that begin with the letter D that we just decided we can't list them all, so we'll just call them D drivers, but we need help. As we said at the beginning, we just lost an EMT at the beginning of the weekend who was struck as he was rendering aid at the scene of an accident. And what we're seeing really even worse now is that we're seeing these drivers drive through our barricades, or they're hitting our blocking vehicle and they're losing their lives. We don't want to see that either. No, we don't want any of our people hurt or killed, but we don't want to see innocent drivers injured or killed in these accidents. We want everyone to get to their destination safely for whatever the purpose was, but especially for our brothers and sisters, keep them safe. Okay, Todd, again, my thanks. It's great to see you. Great to have you. Have a pleasant trip, your little drive up north. Now,
Thanks,
by the
Steve.
way, I would be remiss for our video viewers who are watching us on YouTube when we post this later today, that I love blue. It's my favorite color, but that's a particular blue that I started to recognize when I saw that the American flag on your left sleeve and no sleeve on the right, but there's nothing there, just the left. But it sure looks like would be something, a color that would be worn north of us here in Broward or South Palm Beach County, up towards the Space Coast. I think it would be worn. Would I have that right?
Absolutely. I've been layering this week. It's amazing how growing up in Boston, but not being used to the even 40 degree temperatures you mentioned. So, but yeah, it's been an honor. Thanks for having me on, Steve. It's always a special treat to be able to share with your listeners, and I wish everyone a great, happy, healthy, and safe 2023.
Yep, we all do. Thank you, Todd. Folks, we're going to be right back right after these words. If you're listening to the audio, if you're listening to the video, this will be the end of the video cast. we again thank you for joining us. As we echo Todd's words, we wish you all a very happy, safe, and healthy 2023. And remember, reach out and help someone. Number 2, learn. Find something you want to study. If you're a firefighter, paramedic, even law enforcement, learn. Find something to study. It's going to make you do a better person. It's going to help you do your job just a little bit more each time you do it. Folks, thanks for tuning in. We wish you all the best. We'll be right back after the first of the year, and we'll see you soon. If you're listening to the audio, stay tuned. We're going to be right back right after these words. As always, please stay tuned.